history of the church windows when they're put in with from.
Just give your talk. We'll worry about that later. We'll patch it in.
That's fine. So this is the largest rose window that we have in our parish. It's called a rose window because it's kind of got petals, also known as a wheel window. It's Gothic architecture that came, let's see if I have my notes here. It came from France, I remember that. There we go. 1140 AD began the era of Gothic architecture. So our church is probably more Gothic revival back after that, but this is where it comes from, the Gothic French architecture of the rose windows. This is the largest and most prominent at the front of our church. Normally they are pictured in some sort of spaces in an alcove, just like the other two are in our parish as well. And this one being the biggest front and center one, does have some certain symbols and figures on it that are very important. Besides the fact that this is also used to be the choir loft, so that's why we have Saint Cecilia here. She is the patron saint of music, which explains all the instruments and such around and stuff. And I can go into detail more about Saint Cecilia in a little bit, but first I just kind of want to touch on the architecture of it itself. Just that I haven't seen a lot of information Gothic architecture. Usually the circle in the middle is called the boss. Usually it's much smaller and the wheel slopes around it, I want to say that, are more prominent. Ours isn't so much that way. We've got the picture in the middle that's bigger. So that's kind of unique, like I said, more of the Gothic revival style. There's not really any significance to the number of slopes around the sides. We have 12 here and then 12 also in the other two that are over here. But it is a derivative of 3. Of course, 3 tends to be a holy number, Holy Trinity as such. And you'll see lots of 3s in the windows throughout the parish, including little details like 3 little groups of flowers in the background. 3 people standing next to her. So, the angels are kind of interesting. These are actually seraphim, which is considered one of the highest order of angels exists. If you're going to look into people that try to decipher through the Bible, categorizing them into different sects, different groups. Actually, they're called different choirs. That's what they call choirs of angels, or the different groups. There's supposedly 9 categories. And seraphim are the highest category. They are the guardians of the throne of God. So it's pretty important that they are here right at the front of church in a circle, encircling, showing their love of God towards the parish. It's also significant that a lot of windows, stained glass windows, these circle ones, represented the whole universe compressed into our beliefs and shining down because they want the heavenly light of stained glass windows coming down on us. It's the atmosphere. But more importantly, there's not a lot of writing as you see on any windows, and that's because of the imagery. Back in the old times, people weren't very literate, so they did their storytelling through images, and that's why we have pictures of beautiful stained glass windows throughout history. It also explains why there's a lot of instruments around St. Cecilia, because even though she's the patron saint of music, we have no record that she ever touched an instrument, knew how to play anything, but she's always sitting at like an organ, and that's because of her association with music. But people didn't necessarily know what musical notes were writing down, so it's a way to represent music to people back then was, here's an instrument. They say instrument equals music. It makes sense. Because she's often depicted with a viola, which is what the angel here has, or at an organ. Of course, they didn't have quite sit-down organs like that back in her time. That didn't even become a thing in churches throughout Europe until the 14th century. Although they did have the beginnings of the first organs in the Roman Empire back when she was born in like the 3rd century. Those were actually powered, the air pressure through the pipes were powered by water, and they were called hydraulis. And they were smaller ones, so sometimes you'll see depictions of her with a smaller organ, like about this big, hold in her hand, or she wouldn't actually hold it, but that's what it was, a Roman, the first kind of organ ever invented, which is pretty neat. So Saint Cecilia is significant because she was the first saint to be found her body incorrupt, which means she was the first that when her body was dug up, or so to speak, or taken from the crypt, it looked like she had just fallen asleep. She hadn't decomposed. It was a few hundred years later. Nothing had happened to her. Now the church kind of categorizes incorrupt as being like the organs and stuff haven't broken down to putrefaction and stuff, or different bits and pieces. Like St. Vincent de Paul is known for his heart. Like his other organs might have decomposed, but his heart was still normal, as if he was still alive, like not beating, but normal like that. So this was the first instance of that, which is why she's very well known as a saint. Although canonization, she's not a canonized saint, because they didn't start canonization until about 1200, you know, and she was born, or she died, they're saying roughly 230. So there's some information known about her. There wasn't a whole lot of written down back then, at that time. And stories about her really didn't pop up until over 100 years after she had passed away. But the story about her is that she was a martyr. That might be why she's also wearing red, as we see here. And that she was a virgin. She had promised her virginity to God in a time where Christendom wasn't really well accepted. She came actually from a noble pagan family, and they were okay with her being a Christian. Like, they didn't really give much mind to it, I guess. Most likely she probably had a nanny or a servant that really brought her into the faith. But she promised her virginity and to be pure for God. But her family decided to marry her off to another wealthy noble. So she was in a very sticky predicament, and of course she made this vow, this promise. So while she's going through her wedding day and all that stuff, freaking out, I am sure, it is said that she sang to God in her heart. That's where the musicality comes in, the singing to God in her heart. And that she had asked for, you know, guidance and such like that in the form of her guardian angels. Said that she had a close relationship with her guardian angels. And as we see, there's many angels sitting around her, including the seraphim. So the story goes that on her wedding night, she told her husband to be named Valerian, who was by all accounts a good noble man, that she did admire him, but she wouldn't be able to have the wedding night, so to speak, because her guardian angel would smite him, so to speak, if he dared touch her. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see any guardian angel. And she's like, well, you have to go through these things in order to see him and believe me. And he's like, well, you're, you know, a beautiful, supposedly smart, you know, noble woman. He's like, I have no reason to believe that you'd lie, but show me proof. So she sent him to the Pope, actually. She said, go down the street, so-and-so, ask for this old man named Urban, who actually was Pope Urban I. And he was baptized by Urban, afterwards came back and was able to see the guardian angels. And the guardian angel supposedly gave them crowns of flowers, roses, and I forget what the other flower was, but, and from then forth he said, you know, these crowns will always be immaculate as long as you remain pure. So Cecilia converted her husband, and he had a strong love for his brother, so he converted his brother. So it was she, her husband Valerian, and her brother-in-law Tiberius. Those two, Valerian and Tiberius, were also considered saints unofficially, martyrs, because they would go and take down the bodies of other people who were martyred and bury them respectfully, which wasn't allowed at that time. So other people that were hung killed for their faith, they properly buried them and such. Tiberius and Valerian died before Cecilia. And we're not sure why she was condemned to death. There isn't a record, but it was said that she had been put in, I forget what the word is, like some sort of spa. She was sentenced to death by overheating. So they kept her, they put the heat real high and overnight, and they came back, you know, to find her body the next day, and she was still alive, sitting there, hot, I'm sure. So then they said, forget this, we'll just chop her head off. And they sent an executioner to her, axe or a sword or whatever, and they did try to execute her. They cut her in the neck 3 times, and supposedly, as the story goes, she still lived for 3 days after that. Supposedly. We don't have a whole lot of facts on this. Her stories also came out at a time, like 500s, where these kind of stories were highly romanticized. And like I said, since we have no written documents, this is how it goes. But it sounds pretty good. So in her 3 days of, before she passed away, supposedly she asked Pope Urban to build a church where her house was at. And so we have St. Cecilia Church, Trastevere, I'm probably saying that wrong, Trastevere in Italy, which was commissioned by Pope Urban. We know that. Excuse me. And she was buried in the catacombs of St. Callitux I, who was Pope before Urban. And then later on, her body was moved to the church that was built in her memory for her. The church was badly in need of repair. It was in 822, so they kept on rebuilding it. Her body was actually found incorrupt in the year 1599. So she passed away 230-ish. 1599, they found her body, and it looked like she had just been asleep. I didn't get a chance to print out pictures, but I do have a statue of her that was at that cathedral there. There's couples pictures that you're welcome to pass around and look at. The cardinal at the time, Cardinal Paolo Emilio Sofanzato, found her corpse and had it, examined and stuff. They said that there was a light flowery scent from her body, which is often found by people when they find a corpse like that. They say, it doesn't smell like a dead body. It's a strange thing. And so he had a statue made of marble of her. They had artists come in. I have his name down here too. Yeah, artists come in and make a statue of her, and it shows her in repose on her side, as you saw in the picture. There's different ones. You can see the 3 cuts on her neck in that position. So that's basically why she's famous as the patron saint of music. So she sang in her hearts, and she supposedly lived beyond the 3 cuts, and she was a martyr. That we know for certain. There is proof that archaeologically there was a house at the location where the church is now. There was some residence there, whether it was hers or not, we don't know. But that's kind of her story. So that's kind of how we see her as patron saint of music. She sang in her hearts. She's looking out for those who are also trying to remain pure to God and who use music as a form of compassion, sympathy, and connecting with the Lord. And of course, she's surrounded by angels because of her connection with her guardian angel. Maybe 3 angels for her, Valerian, and Tiberius. We don't know. There's, like I said, lots of symbols of 3 throughout the picture. And the instruments, as I kind of explained that they were. Anyone have any questions or things they want to point out about the windows?